Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cantor Elizabeth Goldman. I am a close friend of Kimberly's and becoming friends with many of her loved ones, which is my honor, and my honor to lead you through your remembrances this afternoon. I open up with these words of Hannah Senish. There are stars up above, so far away we only see their light. Long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with people that we loved. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us as we live our days. These are the ways we remember. We remember as we live our days. These are the ways we remember. We remember. Yesh kochavim shoram magia artsa, rak kasher hem atzmam avdu veinam. We remember. We remember. Friends, we are gathered here to bid a formal farewell to your beloved Lydia Auslander. Dear sister to Stephen and Nita, loving mother to Amy, Todd and Sean and Kimberly and Timothy, and mother-in-law to Joseph, and cherished grandmother to Zoe, Hannah, Eliza, Isabella, and Piper. The family asked me to take a moment and to express how grateful they are for all the connections that Lydia built through her life, through all of you, between you, and between her and you. So I'm going to just invite you to take a moment and look around the room, take a deep breath, and I think looking at each other is worth more than anything I can say. So enjoy these smiles and the warmth around you. That love and warmth and caring that were so emblematic of her, you will now forever share through that blessed miracle of shared memories. It is our tradition at times of grief to find comfort in the age-old message of God's closeness as described by our ancient psalmists. And so I continue with these words from Psalm 23. Adonai roi lo echsar, binot deshe yarbitzeni amei menuchot, Yinachaleni, nafshi shovev, yancheni v'maglei tzedek lema'an shemo, gam ki elech b'geitz ha'mavet, lo irara, ki ata imadi, shivtecha umishantecha, Hema yinachamuni, taroch lefanai shulchan neged tzororai, dishanta v'Hashem en roshi, kosi revaya, חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters, and restores my soul. You lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. And from the ancient psalmists to a more modern one, it is my delight to invite Kimberly, Piper, and Isabella to lead us in a special 20th century psalm.
So as many of you know here, our mom, grandmother was very creative, always wanted to entertain, put on shows. We thought, not going to be able to do that today, but we have to do something. And so we picked a song that she loved. She loved John Denver. She loved folk songs of the 70s. And we gave you all a handout. And so the three of us are going to start it off, and then we'll let you know when we'd like you to come in. Now, there should be
It
three
just goes
verses.
right back to this.
Okay, right,
So we'll restart the beginning with everyone.
okay.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. You fill up my senses like a night in a forest, like the mountains in springtime, like a walk in the rain, like a storm in the desert, like a sleepy blue ocean. You fill up my senses, come fill me again. Come, let me love you, let me give my life to you. Let me drown in your laughter, let me die in your arms, let me lay down beside you, let me always be with you. Come, let me love you, come love me again. You fill up my senses like a night in a forest, like the mountains in springtime, like a walk in the rain, like a storm in the desert, like a sleepy blue ocean. You fill up my senses, come fill me again.
A writing by Rabbi Joe Osran. And the child asked, "Tell me of life." And the sage answered, "Life, my child, is a mystery. We do not ask to be born, nor do we even understand the meaning of birth, of creation. We grow and we experience life's pleasures and pains. We love, and slowly, oh so slowly, we come to realize that we have become, that we are. At that moment, we humble ourselves before the mystery of life and quietly say, though I knew not, I have been granted the most precious gift of all, the gift of life." And the child asked, "Tell me of death." And the sage answered, "Death, my child, is a mystery. It is the inevitable return of the gift of life, the gift which came free to us. We live as the trustee of that mysterious being, of that unexplainable becoming. Yes, you and I are but the trustees of life. We nurture it, we delight in it, we give it to others. And at the appointed time, we sadly, yet with pride, return it from whence it came. The beauty, my child, is that we are what we have become. That remains long after the gift has been returned. It remains as a precious keepsake with our loved ones who live on." And what a keepsake you all have that you already sensed from that leading of Annie's song. So much love that Lydia created, both for her and from her, now to be on display as each child, grandchild, and sibling shares their treasured thoughts with us. And so first, I invite Amy, then Todd, and then Kimberly.
Thank you, everyone, for being here today. It means a lot to me, my siblings, and this is for you, Mom. It's an absolute honor to be able to stand up here in front of all of you to express my love, admiration, and respect for the most remarkable woman I am so proud to say was my mother, Lydia Auslander. I know how much she was loved by so many of you in this room. She was just so lovable. Her beauty, grace, talent, sensitivity, generosity, loyalty, and honesty was something to behold. I was always in awe of my beautiful mother. Lydia was the most angelic child, an adoring daughter and sister. She was a generous mother and grandmother, mother-in-law, aunt, and friend to us all. She valued and earned her friendships, but absolutely adored her family unconditionally. How lucky am I to say that my mother was such a true friend of mine, a confidant, a mentor. There was such side-splitting laughter when we were together, and lots of sad and happy tears. My friends all loved my mother. They would mention that she was such a good listener. My memories of my mother always included music, food, travel, culture, hugs and kisses, and the treasured little moments. Her relationship with her brother Stephen is still one that is hard for me to compare to anything else. And then there is Nita. She became the sister she never had. It's hard to think of life now without Lydia. She was such an iridescent light, such a force. It's comforting and reassuring to know that her light remains in each and every one of her granddaughters. All of them have a Lydia light, and it will continue to grow and shine throughout their lives. Thank you, Mom. The last years of her life were so hard for her and for those who loved her. We watched her body fail, but her spirit and her mind stayed strong. She never complained, and believe me, she had a lot to complain about. Her family, what kept her going. I hope we can all rally around each other now to keep her memory strong and meaningful. Lydia had a knack for making everyone feel special. Her love was equally divided between Todd, Kimberly, and myself and her 5 granddaughters. And oh my God, how she loved those girls. She had 5 strong individual relationships with them. She championed them all. Thank you to those who were there for her during those hard years. To her 2 loving aides. Deb and June, thank you. They were so wonderful to her. I wish they knew her before her illness. She had such a vivacious spirit. Parkinson's is a dreadful disease. It robbed her of her independence and her spontaneity. As I wrote down my thoughts, I tried to think of what I could tell you about her that you might not know. She loved to please, and she loved. She looked up to her brother Steve, especially when their dad went off to war. Steve always looked after her and continued until her passing. Lydia loved to perform. She wanted to act. She wanted to be an actress. But after she married and had a baby 9 months later, her job as a mother and wife became her priority. Later, she became the most wonderful nursery school teacher. She took care of 3- and 4-year-olds and then came home to the 3 of us. She made dinner, helped with homework, and always had time to sing around the piano and my guitar. She was a mother that ran out onto the street to play boxball and have a catch. Our friends were always welcome to our house and to the huge supply of an assortment of snacks in our kitchen cupboard. So when will I think of her the most? Talks of Broadway shows, Larry David, Bill Maher, Josh Groban, Gordon Lightfoot, Elton John, James Taylor. Holiday tradition and food, especially Thanksgiving, because that was her holiday. Strudel, lemon bars, candy, egg creams, root beer floats, apple pie, Reuben sandwiches, hot dogs with sauerkraut. When I laugh so hard that my eyes tear up and my nose runs and I slap my thigh, I will think of her contagious laugh. When I'm proud of my Zoe and I want to tell someone, I'll try to imagine what she would say. And I'll think about when we went back on our trip to China when Zoe was 13 and all of the trips we made together as a family to Cape Cod, Wilmington, D.C., Club Med, ski trips, Paris, and the cruise to Bermuda for her 80th birthday. And I can't leave out all of the holidays spent with the Lowy family. I'll end this by simply saying she was extraordinary, unforgettable. I adore my mother and will miss her more than I can possibly express. Thank you.
Okay, so I don't know how I'm going to get through this, but how do you write about a life and sum it up in a few pages? These past few weeks really showed me who my mother was. From the moment she started her decline, and all 5 granddaughters mobilized by trains, planes, and automobiles to be by her side, the true meaning of her life was displayed. Amy, Kimberly, me, Bella, Hannah, Zoe, Piper, and Eliza, Sean, and Tim became a constant presence by her side and showered her with the love and affection that had been given to us throughout all of our lives. During this time, stories were shared, memories relived, childhood videos displayed. The lives of her children and grandchildren, daughter-in-law, son-in-law, brought back to her in vivid detail. I truly believe every single memory of our lives was retold to her as she lay in her own bedroom. She couldn't speak, save for the lifting of an eyebrow or the very soft whisper of our names and the mouthing of I love yous to all of us in our quiet, alone moments with her. Mom literally lived for her children and grandchildren. She had no interest in dating because it would take away time spent with us. Her weeks were full, one day in the city with Zoe, another in Valley Cottage with Isabel and Piper, and another in Stanford with Hannah and Eliza. Not one dance recital, music performance, school event was ever missed. She made sure to be there for all of them. Even after her stroke, she refused to miss Eliza's dance class and with the help of her aide would still climb the steps to the dance studio to watch her every single week. But it wasn't just her relationship with her children and grandchildren that were special. She had an unbelievable bond with her brother Steve and sister-in-law Anita. Mom and Steve were as close as any brother and sister could be. When my parents divorced, it was Steve who truly became the patriarch of the family. He was Mom's advisor, confidant, and guide, and made sure she was able to live the life she was supposed to have. Even though Mom and Anita were technically sisters-in-law, they really were sisters. It was a unique friendship and powerful love for over 60 years. My mom was so proud of her and her accomplishments running the country. And as all the 6 kids were born within a 7-year span, the cousins, Dana, Jackie, and Doug, were a constant presence within the families. Family trips, holidays, and sleepover weekends is what we all live for. And it was more time that Mom could spend with Nita and Steve. Before Mom had any grandchildren, both Kimberly and I were living in LA, and Mom would come out and visit as often as she could. But once Isabella and Hannah were born, Mom decided to retire because she couldn't be without seeing her little girls for more than a few months at a time. So every 6 weeks, Mom flew out to LA to be with us for a week or so. Mom loved to laugh and was easy to tease, and we loved to videotape her during her special moments. One of her many nicknames was Toonsis, derived from that old Saturday Night Live skit about the driving cat who always got into car accidents. Mom was so flighty many times in the days before GPS, she would get lost when driving and sometimes stop in the middle of the street and say with an exasperated sigh, "Now where am I?" We would yell at her to pull off to the side of the road. So anytime she did something flighty, she would always call me and say, "I just did a Toonsis." Mom also had a love for the theater, which she instilled in all of us. She was an actress when she was younger, and she loved taking us to the Broadway shows. Big group outings with the kids to see Billy Elliot, Matilda, Mary Poppins, Bye Bye Birdie, many others. And the two of us would often go ourselves to see shows when Sean, Hannah, and Eliza would go out west to see her folks on vacations. When Sean became pregnant with Hannah, I was working in the TV industry, and I never liked to announce things the normal way. Those of you who know how I proposed to Sean will get it. Sean and I flew in from LA to make the announcement to Mom. And while Tim filmed Mom, I told her that I had a new job. As a freelance TV producer, I always had a new job, so Mom never thought twice about it. I said it's starting in 9 months, and she didn't catch on. She just smiled and said, "Really, what's it about?" I said, "It's going to be a really cool production. It's called And Baby Makes 3. She said, "Oh, that's nice." And then she starts putting it together, and the expression on her face changes from happiness about a job to the realization she's going to be a grandmother for the second time. Having these moments on tape is unbelievably special for me. Same for when Hannah was born. Not knowing if we were having a boy or girl, we were able to catch the moment when Mom came in the delivery room and saw her granddaughter for the first time. Her expression upon seeing Hannah being held by Sean is tear-worthy every time we watch. And as for Eliza, she was 3 weeks early, and when Sean called me from the doctor and said, "We have to get to the hospital now," my first phone call was to my mother, who flew into action and raced to the house to babysit Hannah so we can get to the hospital. Again, Mom was the first in the delivery room to see her 5th and last granddaughter born. My girls truly loved their Mimi. They adored her, and they were given unconditional love. They could do no wrong in her eyes. My mother loved them with every fiber in her body. And then there's the relationship my mother had with Sean. Mom had only one daughter-in-law, and you always hear stories about mother-in-laws and daughter-in-laws. This wasn't one of them. Sean really was my mother's 3rd daughter. They had a very unique bond and were extremely close. My mother approved of Sean from day one, and they loved each other like any mother and daughter would. I was so lucky that they had that relationship with each other. Sean never felt burdened about Mom coming over, as she did so often, or the thousands of times we went over to her home. We even celebrated the new millennial together at my home with her and my grandmother, her mom, Mima, too. There are also a few people that I have to thank. My mother has had a lot of aides over the last 5 years, but there are 2 of them that really stand out, June and Deb. Without them, my mother would have passed years ago. They were so much more than aides. The love and attention they showed for my mom will never be matched as far as the caregivers go. Their genuine love for my mother was so apparent. It wasn't just attending to her needs. It was the way they held her hand, the way they stared deeply into my mother's eyes, the caressing and holding her, which I will never forget. When Mom was nearing the end, I walked into my mother's room after my mother had a sleepless night, and June had been awake all night tending to her as well. There, holding my mother's hand, with her head on my mother's pillow, foreheads touching, was June, fast asleep. And whenever Deb walked into the room, you could see the light shine in my mother's eyes. Deb never just talked to Mom. She would get up close to her, stare into her eyes as she spoke, speaking to her gently and adoringly. And Mom knew how lucky she was to have them both. We are so grateful to both of you. You'll forever be a part of our family. And I want to thank my Aunt Nita and Uncle Steve for their love and support. They made sure that my mother could live her life in her home and in an environment where she had nothing to worry about. It was also their love and their constant visits that brought such joy to Mom. I love you both and thank you for everything you have done for this family. We couldn't have done what we have without you. And believe it or not, I also want to thank my business partner and work wife, Jeannie Kassendorf, who has done double time for our team for the past month. First when I had COVID, and then almost immediately after when Mom started her decline. Our business hasn't missed a beat because of her unbelievable organization and stewardship. She allowed me to be by Mom's side and kept us moving forward, and I'm eternally grateful. Besides Parkinson's, which is a horrible disease, my mother suffered a stroke 5.5 years ago. In fact, she very well may have died right at that time, but in a strange way, Hannah and Eliza saved her life. Hannah was a freshman in college, and she was going through a difficult personal time, so Sean and I went down to be with her for a few days. Of course, Mom stayed at our house with Eliza while we were gone. When we came home a few nights later at midnight, Mom and Eliza were sleeping. Mom was in Hannah's room, right next door to Eliza. At around 5 in the morning, Eliza came into our room worried and said, "Mimi is calling for me," and her voice sounds funny. I rushed into the room and realized she had had a stroke. Immediately called 911, and she was rushed to the hospital. If we hadn't been with Hannah, Mom would have been home alone and unable to get to the phone. And so lastly, I thank my daughters for giving us 5 more years of Mimi. And of course, I could go on and on. There's so much more that I'm leaving out, but I've been very lucky and a blessed son to have had a mother that never judged, gave unconditional love, and was always so proud of me no matter what I did. I will miss her greatly, and my heart is filled with such a deep and profound sadness. I will always continue to strive to make you proud of me, and my love for you will continue to grow until the day I die.
Thank you. My mom was an expert. People say it takes about 10,000 hours to become an expert in something. To her, that was just a warm-up. What was her expertise? First and foremost, she was an expert listener, like Amy said, and Todd. She was so good at it because she was effortlessly sincere. She was really interested in what you had to say, what you were doing, what your kids were doing, and she remembered. She always needed updates on my friends. And mind you, not just my friends, but my friends' kids. She knew and loved all of my brothers and sisters-in-law and knew better than they sometimes what they were doing, what my nieces and nephews were doing, who they were dating, what music, what movies they were into, what was their latest jobs. She remembered and cared. That was my mom. Her main focus was always the small orbit of people in her life. And that's one of the reasons why I love talking to her every day. Yes, every day. All through college, when I moved back to New York, when I moved out to LA, and then back to New York again. Every day. Long distance, pay by the minute, every day. I just loved talking to her. She was so interested in my life. She never judged me. She gave advice when asked, and I did the same for her. We talked about life, we analyzed everything, and we laughed a whole lot. She was my mom and my best friend together. My mom was very funny. She didn't just have good one-liners, which, by the way, she did right up until the very end, barely talk, and she was able to get out these one-liners. But there was a tremendous physicality to her humor as well. She was clownish, like Lucille Ball. In all of our home movies, Mom was the one putting on the show. I adored laughing with her. She had one of those really contagious laughs that ended up making you feel like you just got to work out. And me making her laugh was a given whenever we were together. She loved my sense of humor, and therefore, she was an easy audience. Isabella, Piper, and Tim loved seeing the two of us get into our laughing fits when we just couldn't stop, each one making the other one laugh harder and harder. Isabella would notice the beginning of it, and she'd say, here they go. And sure enough, off we went. Mom always taught me to find the humor in everything, and I think about that often as just one of the countless wonderful life lessons she's taught me over the years. My mom also taught me how to walk like a New Yorker. She was a New Yorker through and through. She loved being next to so much culture in the city and loved sharing what the city had to offer with us. But the New York walk, she was an expert. During summer internships and then right after college, we commuted into the city together from New Rochelle. She refused to wear sneakers with her skirts and dresses and still managed to walk very fast, eyes darting around, gauging whether to take the crosstown or uptown street crossing to keep on the move. She had no patience for slow walkers. If it was up to her, they wouldn't have been allowed in Midtown. I loved trying to keep up with her. It was great when I worked in her building for a while because we'd also have lunch together. Sometimes when I finished work, I would walk down to the office to say goodbye, and then she would walk me to the elevator. And I remember thinking how funny it was that she just wanted like those extra couple of minutes with me. I cherish the memories of singing songs together. Her on the grand piano in our childhood home, playing Broadway show tunes and songs of the 70s and 80s, with Amy and I singing our hearts out. Jim Croce, John Denver, James Taylor, and on and on. We did this all the time. Mom helped me with all my musical auditions from elementary up through high school. She was a musical theater major in college, and as such, she was the self-appointed head of all entertainment in our neighborhood growing up. She put together the skits and wrote the funny and sometimes salty limerick songs for the neighborhood parties. Our house was the one where everyone hung out. Mom was why. She absolutely loved being with all my friends, and they with her. She was kind, she was fun. We had ring-dings, funny bones, Hostess fruit pies, yodels, and Count chocolate cereal in the pantry. Unlike the Loeys, who just had grape nuts cereal. Isabel and Piper were not as lucky as the snacks I kept while they were growing up. Right, Toby? But they grew up with our house being the house that friends felt comfortable hanging and sleeping over at. I love having a house full of your friends, just like my mom did, and it's one of the traits I know I got from her. We were living out in LA when Isabella was born, and not having my mom around was not easy. Isabella was only a few months old, and Todd mentioned it too, and Mom decided she would retire because she just didn't want to go more than 2 months without seeing her. I remember waking up knowing Isabella and I would be going to the airport to pick her up, and what a wonderful week it would be. She would not take her eyes off of Isabella's face for that entire visit. When Isabella was 2, Tim and I decided there was just too much family tugging us back to New York. Lucky for us, Todd, Sean, and Hannah moved back as well, and so Mom's new full-time job was being with all of her granddaughters as much as possible. Tim and I moved in with her for a year while we searched for our first home. We gave Isabella the second bedroom, my mom insisted, got her new furniture, mom insisted, and Tim and I slept in the den, mom insisted. And it worked. Her son-in-law and daughter lived in her den for a year. It worked because my mom was just pure joy. We loved making dinners together, giving Isabella baths together, having Todd, Sean, and Hannah run over for midweek dinners, and Amy and Zoe on the weekends. It was amazing. When we finally bought a home over the Tappan Zee Bridge, which seems so far, but as soon as Piper was born, it was not far at all because Mom started driving over every single chance she could get. I would say to her, "You doing anything? Want to come over?" And I swear I could hear her starting her car engine before she even hung up the phone. And that goes for all the grandchildren. Isabella, Piper, Zoe, Hannah, and Eliza were her life. I remember the day Mom found out she had Parkinson's. It was the day of Isabella's graduation from our elementary and middle school. She felt so terrible that we were given the news right as we were pulling out of the driveway to go to graduation. But from that moment on, she never, ever complained. For years, it was manageable, and her energy, enthusiasm for everything did not falter one bit. 5 years ago, she had a major stroke, and that, plus the Parkinson's kicking into full gear, shrunk her orbit further. She was housebound and practically bedridden. Mentally, she was all there, even though looking at her, you would have thought differently. Now we started coming to her instead of the other way around. She endured constant pain and sometimes had a hard time speaking. But did she still want company? Did she still love people coming to see her? Did she still want us telling her stories, filling her in on our friends and their families' lives? And did she still want to be a part of it all? You bet. That was Mom. And I know that she's out there and inside here doing everything she can to savor this moment, making sure that we all do the same.
Thank you. And her grandchildren, Isabella, Zoe, Hannah, Piper, and Eliza.
Hi, I'm the oldest granddaughter, in case anyone didn't know. A month ago, when I got the call that my grandma, Mimi, as we call her, was passing, I still had glitter in my hair from a show my band and I played the night before. I tried as hard as I could to scrub it out, but it was stubborn. I flew back home to New York, and each day that we drove to her house to tell her stories, to sing and hold her hand, to be by her side, the glitter was still there. Mimi was the same. Every event, every graduation, concert, spontaneous purchase of a new pet, basically every day of my life, Mimi was there with a sparkle in her eyes. She was stubborn, refusing to let anything get in the way of her relationship with her family. The funny thing is, I wouldn't have even had that glitter in my hair if it wasn't for Mimi. She floated through life in song, making people laugh, performing and being our funny girl. How lucky we were to be surrounded by someone so full of life, teaching us how to be kind, how to love, and how to laugh just by being herself. Because of this, I don't think it was surprising to either of my parents when I said I wanted to pursue a career in music. Whether I knew it or not at the time, Mimi was my muse. When Mimi had her stroke at the end of my sophomore year of college, it became harder and more sorrowful for me to sift through my memories and look back on how she used to be. But now I feel strong enough to open the gates that those beautiful memories of hers tucked away. And they have flooded back in and surrounded me, and I am so grateful. She loved giving gifts, and these memories were the best gifts she'd ever given me. To end my eulogy, I'll give a quote from her that I think perfectly sums up our relationship. Almost 2 years ago, I moved out to LA, and a month later, it was my birthday. I called her crying, saying how much I missed her. I immediately wrote down what she said with tears in my eyes because I knew it was another special gift that she had given me. "We have a special thing, don't we?" she said. And I can't see you, but I can hear you, and I can see you in my heart. And when you think of me, know that I'm thinking of you too. And when we both think of each other, it's only happy thoughts. And when your friends sing you happy birthday, picture me singing too. Mimi, I'll forever picture you singing along right next to me. I love you oh so so.
Hi, I'm Zoe, Amy Auslander's daughter, in case you didn't know who I was. Okay. Ooh, it's a little- okay. As I try to reflect on my favorite memories of Mimi, I have come to appreciate how she has had an incredible impact throughout my life and how I will continue to cherish these memories for years to come. I would like to share some of my most memorable moments with Mimi and why I'm proud to call her my grandmother. To start off with a bang, who could forget when our caring and cautious Mimi went to supervise my Pee Wee Jamboree classes? As a proud grandmother of a strong and swift 2-year-old, she always had my back. That is until I fell off a balance beam and broke my leg. Had to. Whoopsies, she would say. But with my hot pink cast and Mimi holding me up, together we learned that this Tuffy Toodles would always bounce back. A favorite film of mine when I was growing up was Mary Poppins. I was fascinated by the fantasy world in which a charming and magical woman took such wonderful care of young children while singing, dancing, and spreading love. What most of you don't know, though, is for the longest time I was convinced that Mary Poppins was not played by Julie Andrews, but by our own grandmother, Lydia Auslander. I mean, it's an easy mistake to make. Her beautiful looks, glowing personality, and endless affection was enough to convince a 5-year-old Zoe that we were indeed in the presence of a superstar. And as they say in the film, Mimi truly was practically perfect in every way. I was fortunate to always call Mimi a travel buddy throughout our times abroad, especially when that came with Steve's room upgrade. From Disneyland to Paris and China to Bermuda, the adventures were always enhanced with the excitement and laughter that Mimi provided. After all, I could never forget the smile on Mimi's face when she sighted the chubbiest, chunkiest Chinese baby in all of Asia during our heritage tour. Not me. I was skinny. Our entire family was also blessed with our annual ski trips that Mimi treated us to. Her generosity and ability to bring the entire family together will always be admired and appreciated, as it is the foundation of our love and cousinly bond. Ooh. What was so amazing about Mimi was her youthful sense of humor and her ability to be more than just a grandmother, but a friend to her grandchildren as we grew up. It was always fun to gossip with Mimi about the latest below-deck drama, which housewives were acting up, and all while eating chocolates and Tootsie Lollies in her gigantic bed. She could always recite more TV commercials than I could, and we always laughed at her need for crepey skin, which she loved. In retaliation, Mimi would jokingly call my stuffed animals Itchy and Scratchy instead of Stripey and Patchy. Going to Mimi's on the weekend was not just a trip to our grandmother's, but a trip to our second home. As I wrote in my birthday card to her, 69 reasons why I love you, summer pool days with ice pops and car rides to Rye Ridge Deli were a staple piece of my childhood. No matter how much was said, or how many people were in the room, or how far we were from each other, I would always lock eyes with her and mouth, "I love you," and she would whisper it back as if we were the only people in the world. We knew without saying any words that we loved each other and always will. There are endless memories and reasons why I love our dear Mimi, and I will continue to honor her memory by striving to become the generous, graceful, and loving woman that she will always be remembered by. Thanks.
Hello, I'm Hannah. I have the wrong English. There's a video of the first time Mimi saw me, just a few minutes after I came into the world. Her expression said it all. She cried out with tears of happiness, so excited to meet me. But within a few months, the side of my head became a bit flat, and I was prescribed a special helmet to wear 24/7. Of course, Mimi was concerned, as any grandmother would be. She always worried about us. We called her Mimi of the nervousness. It was one of her many nicknames. However, Mimi was Mimi to everyone else. Friends, boyfriends, teachers, Ridge Deli, and even celebrities. The list goes on because that's how many people she's touched. Mimi will always be that special. Thank you, Mimi, for always making sure I was okay and for loving me even with a flat head. Your wit, charm, contagious laughter, and rhymes will forever be in my heart. I was finally able to remove my helmet just before my first birthday party, and Mimi wrote me this poem, which was framed and hung in my room for all the years I was growing up. Hannah's helmet. When Hannah was born, she was 7 pounds 3. She was round, she was rosy, just as cute as could be. And as Hannah grew, her parents oft said, "I'm just not quite sure of one side of your head." The doctor said, "Yes, Hannah's mommy, and yes, Hannah's dad. There is a slight problem, but it's really not bad. One side of her head is a little bit flat, and we'll fix it in time, and that is just that. We'll get her a helmet, and then in that way, her head will be round if she wears it each day." So Hannah began, as the doctor advised, to wear her new helmet, and she soon realized that it made her so itchy and it made her so sore that Hannah just wanted to wear it no more. Her daddy thought, what if I take it and instead of plain white, put stickers all over? Wouldn't that be a sight? So that's what he did as he stayed up all night. Hannah's helmet was finished by dawn's early light. Everyone goo-gooed, just look at her hat. I too have a baby and would like one like that. Hannah wore it all day and soon didn't care. Her mom took it off when she washed Hannah's hair. A year has gone by. Hannah's now 1 year old. She's been a real trooper, as my tale has been told. She's having a party. Many friends will abound. Hannah's head had become just so perfectly round. So remember this story if you need to look better. And get good advice, write Hannah a letter. If you come in her room and you look at her chair, you'll see Hannah's helmet on her big teddy bear. I love you oh so, your favorite granddaughter, Hannah.
Hello. Tuesday was always a special day for me. It was the day that I spent the most time with Mimi. Each Tuesday, I would count down the minutes until the final bell rang at school, and I would get on the bus to head back home. Waiting for me at the bus stop would be Mimi, oftentimes with our old dog, Heidi. Both of our smiles would enlarge the second we saw each other, and she would put out her arms to catch me in our long-running hugs that I frequently remember. We then got into her red Prius, and we were off to dance. As long as I could remember, Mimi was taking me to dance. She loved every second of it, as did I. One of my dance studios allowed people to sit and watch in the room as the lessons were going on. Mimi took this to her advantage, as she would sit in the back and wouldn't ever miss a thing. My dance teacher would make us repeat the routine multiple times, but she never got sick of it. I wouldn't be surprised if she even knew my dances by heart. Her favorite was the routine I did from the musical Newsies. One time while driving back home, we were listening to the Broadway station, and my song from Newsies came on. All I remember was both of us singing to the song and enjoying each other's company as my dance was replaying in our heads. She loved coming to dance with me and loved complimenting the other dancers and dance teacher. After every class, she would go up to my teacher and talk about how much she appreciated the routines and how wonderful her choreography was. This just shows the kindness and thoughtfulness that Mimi had. Unfortunately, when Mimi had her stroke, she wasn't able to come to dance for a while. However, as soon as she got better, she pushed through with so much strength and came back every Tuesday like normal. Even when her walking got worse, she was able to make it up the flight of stairs to watch me dance. This truly meant a lot to me and showed how much she was willing to do to be with me on our day together. After dance, she would come back home, and we would enjoy dinner together and sometimes play games. Eventually, the day would come to an end, and the cycle would begin of me counting down the days until Tuesday rolled over again.
Okay. We have one more.
There's one other memory that we would like to share. Whether it be birthday cards, camp cards, or holiday cards, Mimi would always sign her name with a small smiley face next to it. This is something that truly symbolizes her, as it is something we grew up seeing.
Over the last few weeks, as we were looking through old pictures and letters, we stumbled upon a few camp cards which were signed by Mimi, and of course had the little smiley face next to her name. We then thought it would be nice to carry that symbol of Mimi on us forever.
A few days ago, we were walking around Brooklyn, and we came across a street full of tattoo shops. Randomly walking into one, we were greeted by the owner. We showed her Mimi's drawing and signature.
The owner looked closely at the photo and with an excited but confused expression said, "What was your grandmother's name?" "Mimi," we said. In disbelief, she proclaimed, "My name is Mimi too." And with that, we took it as a sign. Mimi tattooed the iconic face that will always be smiling back at us. Come find us later if you want to see it.
Hi, I'm Piper. Over the course of the past month, I've been given my Mimi back in ways I never thought imaginable. I know that sounds backwards. How can I gain someone who has just passed? But let me explain. Mimi had her stroke when I was just under 16 years old, which was 5 years ago now. Since then, her Parkinson's progressively got worse. She was still incredibly quick-witted, golden-hearted, and grievously fond of chocolate, of course. Yet as the years progressed, those fiery qualities seemed to become more and more repressed. I never liked to think about it when she was still with us. I was too afraid to think of my old memories with her, or to look at old pictures and videos. It made me too sad. I wanted to just be able to grasp the Mimi that I still had without longing for what wasn't there anymore. This has all changed in the past month. As she was slipping away, I felt more and more connected to her than I have been in a long time. Each day, as my entire family surrounded her, we recounted every single memory that we can think of, a lot of which has been told today. We looked through endless photos, videos, old voice memos, and other mementos that I hadn't thought about in a long time. And while recounting those stories to her while we still could, I could see that same Mimi reacting in the ways that she still could, with blinks, squeezes of the hand, and that slight double kiss that we used to give each other. She even used some of her last words to humor us. Mimi is gone now, but I still feel her so near. Throughout this process of remembering her life, I have also discovered her immense influence on the people that were lucky enough to have had her in their lives. Something that has hit me really hard since her passing is the thought that my future children and family will never get the chance to meet Mimi. But now, while I realize that they won't be able to truly meet her, they'll see her sparkle and love for entertainment in my mom. They'll see her diehard loyalty to those she loves in Amy. And they'll see her naughty and extremely clever humor in Todd. And I hope that they'll even see a little part of her in me as well. I don't know what happens when someone leaves this earth. I'm not sure if someone can send signs to their loved ones, can enter their souls in some way, can look over them. But if there's anyone who could find a way to be with us, it's Mimi. If there is a way to be in our lives still, Mimi will be there. I miss you endlessly, and I love you so much, my darling memes. Kiss, kiss.
And her dear brother, Stephen.
Hi, everybody. 22 years before she became Lydia Auslander, my sister was Lydia Lowy. That woman of college years, that little girl you may see there, about 6 years old. My earliest memory, I'm about 3.5 years older than she. My earliest memory was when, on June 15th of 1936, she was born in New York, and my mother came home in a hospital about 1 week later, in a ambulance about 1 week later. And I remember playing on the front lawn as the ambulance came up to the house, and my mother and Lydia exiting on a stretcher, going into the house. That's a memory. 3.5 years old. First time I ever met Lydia was then. Lydia and I were the only two children of Henry and Rebecca Lowy, and we were very close. We lived in a small house. It was a row house in St. Albans. That is to say, all the houses were attached to each other the whole block long, and we lived in the corner house. And our father was a doctor, what is today called a family doctor. He took care of people, kids, working people that had minor illnesses and fevers, colds, and he would make house calls. And Lydia and I, together or separately, would go around with him in his car, making house calls in St. Albans as he went around taking care of the people that were his patients. His office was in our house. We lived in the front, and the office was in the back. And so our father would have office hours, something like 4 to 6, and then he would come in through the door and into the dining room and have dinner with us, and then go back into the office. And that was that was the home that we lived in St. Albans. We were right across the street from the school. And I went to PS 136, and 3 years later, Lydia went to PS 136. And we all knew each other's friends. We all knew each other's friends from the neighborhood. Christmas time, we went over to the Clinton house and helped them with their Christmas tree. We were wondering how come we didn't do that, and we soon learned why not. But we lived in a community, St. Albans, where there were very few Jews. I was the only Jewish kid in my class. Lydia was the only Jewish kid in her class. And we had to travel about a mile to go to Beth Israel Center of St. Albans, which is on Farmers Boulevard. And that's where we met the Jewish kids in the surrounding areas. Now, my father was practicing throughout the 30s. In 1941, when the war started, there was a great surge of patriotism in the country. Many men, only men then, volunteered for the service. And my father, Lydia's father, was 39 years old, could have escaped the draft, but he didn't want to. He wanted to serve his country, as so many others were doing at the time. One of our precious memories, I've told this before, I see some smiles, was in 1942, when my father got his orders to report to Fort Dix for service. We had about a week to spend together. And my parents went up to Stevensville Lake Hotel in the Catskills. And we had 4 or 5 days together before my father was going to be serving in the Army. On amateur night, little Lydia Lowy, who was about 6 years old in that picture, got up on the stage and she sang this song. You'll excuse my voice, as you obviously see. I'm not very good at singing anymore. I used to like to sing. Thank you, Amy. And she sang, "He's 1A in the Army, and he's A1 in my heart. He's gone to serve the country that helped him to get a start. I love him so because I know he's going to do his part, 'cause he's 1A in the Army, and he's A1 in my heart. And the whole place broke out into tears. A week later, our father left for Fort Dix. And the last time we saw him before he was shipped overseas, he was shipped overseas. This was in August or September that he got his orders. He was shipped overseas right after Thanksgiving. So just before he left for Thanksgiving, my mother, Lydia, and I drove to Fort Dix to say goodbye to him. And my mother spent the night at Fort Dix, and Lydia and I went to see Walt Disney's Fantasia. We used to go to the movies a lot together, and I do remember that night in 1942, in November, we went to the movies together while our mother and father spent their last night together. And then my father was off for 3.5 years. And Lydia and I and our mother decided we would no longer stay in St. Albans during the war years, that mother preferred to go back to Wilmington, North Carolina, home of our dear cousin Darrell, who was not born then, and live with our grandparents, Ben and Esther May, at 1406 Chestnut Street in Wilmington. And we did that. And it was no fun being a Yankee, going from our friends at PS 136 to the local school, the Chestnut Hill School in Wilmington. I spoke funny. I don't know why they thought so, but they all thought I spoke funny. And they thought, and Lydia too. So we didn't have many friends, and we were looked upon with a little bit of suspicion, but we spent most of our time together. And so the point I'm really making is during the whole war years, when our father was away, our mother and Lydia and I spent all our time together because we corresponded with. You couldn't text, you couldn't phone, you couldn't email. There was no way of communicating. And by the way, where my father's location in England was a secret. I mean, he could not disclose where he was located. It was a war secret. So at all events, we would sit around the piano and sing. And it was mentioned, Kimberly, I think, how much she loved to sing and how much she loved music. And she always did, from the time she was very little. And we'd sing songs, and my mother would play the piano, and we would sing songs. And after the time in Wilmington, when we went to school, my mother decided that we'd spend the summer. This was the summer of 1943, and I'm 10 years old. Lydia is 7 years old. We spent the summer in Miami, and we would sit on the porch at Collins Avenue and watch the troops go by, the marching troops, because they had Navy station there and Army station there. And Lydia and I would sit there, and as the troops went by and march, sound off, 1, 2, sound off, we'd watch them go by. And we'd know all the military songs and all the marching songs. And we would listen to the hit parade. The two of us would we always listened to a lot of music. The war songs, I think some of you may remember that when Lydia's 60th birthday came, I dressed up in uniform and sang the war songs that we used to sing together during the war, like Coming In on a Wing on a Prayer, and There's Bluebirds Over the White Cliffs of Dover. Not to mention the pop songs like the Andrews Sisters with Don't Sit Under the Apple Tree with Anyone Else But Me, you know. And we knew all the war songs and all the pop songs of the day. And Lydia, and when we came back, so after with Miami, we didn't want to go back to Wilmington. We didn't have friends there. We didn't want to go back to school there. We want to go back home to St. Albans, where our friends and our. So Mom said, okay. So she came back to St. Albans, and for the rest of the war, from 1943 until 1945, we were back home. And I do remember that we were just so close. Now, Lydia was always a very sweet, kind, giving person. I do not remember having arguments with her. I do not remember having fights with her. And that was true with my father. My father was a very mild man, a very generous, giving person. And Lydia took after him a lot. She took after both parents, but my father was particularly close to her. And when he finally came back home after the war years, he left in 42, and he came back in September of 45. So he was away for more than 3 years. And that was a big, big day for all of us. I can have to tell you how emotional it was. And he was discharged from the Army the day after my bar mitzvah. I was 13 years old in January of 1946. And Lydia was 3 years younger. And we lived all these years together. We couldn't have been closer. And so after that, I went off to school, to Woodmere, and she went to Andrew Jackson. Alice is here. She became friendly as Alice. She and Alice became buddies back in those days. And it's so wonderful that you came here, Alice. In any event, when I went off to college and she went off to college, we were still close, but not the same as living in the same house down the hall, you know, for umpteen years. So I want to just tell you this background because the woman that you've heard so much about, the mother, the grandmother, the loving friend, the actress, she loved to perform. I used to take her during the war years into the city myself. We lived in St. Albans. We had to take a bus, the Q3A bus from Murdoch Avenue into Jamaica, and take the E or the F train from Jamaica into Lexington Avenue, where I got off, or go to the West Side. And then Lydia would have acting lessons at the Bone Adams studio on the west side of Manhattan. And I do remember taking her for her rehearsals, and we all went to see her play. She loved to act, she loved to sing, and I think you have some videos of her, or maybe some mementos of her of those days. So I just wanted to, again, tell all of you, yes, everything you heard from her dear children, for her dear grandchildren, and their feelings and their love came from out of her feelings for them as she lived those years. In the earlier years, she was just a wonderful young woman, a wonderful girl, a loving, caring child for her parents. Her parents adored her. And so for me, it's particularly poignant, I guess, being the older brother to have survived her and to be privileged to be living and to be commemorating here with you. So I thank you all for coming. It means a lot to all of us. And Lydia, God bless you.
And a especially sweet contribution from Sean and Tim, they will explain to you now.
Okay, wow, it's a lot of people. Yeah. A lot of love in the room. So we've heard a lot about Lydia today. We've heard so many wonderful things from people about Lydia, but we thought it would be fun to hear from Lydia about what her life was like in a couple of month period when she wrote letters home to mom and dad as a freshman at Syracuse University. And we came across, during this last couple of weeks, we came across stacks of things, and we saw these yellowed pages that were hand typed and had Syracuse embossing on it. And we started reading through them, and we just couldn't believe what a treasure trove we found. So Sean and I thought it might be fun to read one or two excerpts from a couple of those letters.
Maybe 3 or 4.
Maybe 3 or 4.
Okay, October 4th, dearest Mom and Dad. There must have been a little mix-up, Daddy, since I got a very lovely letter from you, only it was written to Steve. It's a lucky thing you didn't say anything evil about me. I forwarded the letter to him today. What would happen if you had 5 children in college? Question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. I'm very fond of my roommate, Mimi Coleman. Most of the girls are nice individually, but since this place is manifested with men, girls become their usual jealous, catty selves, and wolves, and there are a few you could choke sometimes. I had a date last night with the star of the football team, and I'm not exaggerating. He's one of the best-looking boys up here. All the girls have been after me all day, asking how I came to meet him. I have a theme due Tuesday, 500 words at least. This one is on how comic book strips depict the American way of life. I'm still happy, but still miss you and love you very, very much. More soon, Lydia, XXXX.
October 11th. Dearest Folksies, the weather continues exceptionally hot, and I live in Bermudas. Sorority rushing is the biggest topic of conversation here now, and I look at the whole deal in a very passive fashion. The process of going to each of the houses and smiling until your jaws are about to break, talking about the same thing hundreds of times over again, it's really quite an interesting experience. Of course, the girls all donned their favorite cashmere sweaters. Stay well. I'm counting the days till I see you. All my love and hugs, Lydia.
October 15th. Dearest Mom and Dad, thank you very much for that very generous addition to my account. I will try and see that it is made to last a decent amount of time. Also, the letter was itself poetically lovely. Daddy is certainly a beautiful writer. It really almost put tears in my eyes. Yesterday, I tried out for Death of a Salesman. It was the first time I had ever tried out for a play in front of an audience with one of the actors on the stage with me. I put everything into it, playing the mother's role as she is arguing with her son about his father. I had such a wonderful time up on that stage for those few minutes. This morning in class, Professor Reidenbach complimented me on my acting, and I was thrilled. Keep well and happy. More soon. Love, love, love. XXXX. Liz.
October 19th. Dearest Mom and Dad, Steve called me last night. The reason was just to find out about the sorority situation. I told him, and in the course of conversation, he just mentioned the fact that he had been asked into Hasty Pudding at Harvard, the oldest social club in the country. I was thrilled, and it just goes to show you that if you have the stick-to-it attitude, you'll get what you want. I have a class this afternoon building flats for stage sets. For this class, I wear dungarees. To tell you the truth, it just happens to be the class I liked the least. I guess I was just never cut out to be a carpenter. And so, more later, I love you, miss you very much, Liz.
Okay, October 21st. Dearest Mom and Dad, so much for Alpha Epsilon Phi. Well, that's a life. The pledgies are having teas with a different fraternity every week. They wear little bows on their bosoms, the different colors of the sororities. So now, when you meet someone, they don't look at your face, but your little bosom. How to find out what sorority you're pledging. It hurts for a little while, like an injection, but it wears off as you begin to realize the situation, what is entailed, and how it really will affect my future, which in no way it will. Every day you live for the next day, and I love it that way. I'm extremely happy and haven't allowed little disappointments to spoil my enjoyment of life here at school. Went bowling yesterday, which was very fun. I received professional instruction, which I needed, and my swing now has much more power. I've changed my phys ed to aquatics for the next 2 weeks. I enjoyed the modern dancing, but at times felt clumsy as a horse on stilts. I'll be speaking to you this weekend. All my love, Liz.
November 3rd. Dearest Mom and Pop, yesterday it snowed all day and the campus looked beautiful with that white blanket of snow. We had a wonderful time. What started out as a little snowball fight between a couple of the girls ended up in a mass scramble of fellas against girls, and I was in the middle as usual. I came in sopping wet with snow all over me, but laughed my head off. Mother, you got so many compliments. Everyone thought I had a most attractive mother. So thank you for coming up and letting me show you off after they had seen my gorgeous brother. All they have to see now is my handsome father. Have a great time in Boston this weekend and be on the lookout for some cute John Harvards for me. Give Steve a big kiss for me, too. I'm counting the days till Thanksgiving vacation. I know it's not far away, as the days are like minutes up here. All me loves and hugs, Liz.
November 7th, dearest. Last night, the girls who went to visit Cornell were stewed to the gills, and I was up all night with Robbie Slutsky, and she wouldn't move from her position kneeling by the toilet with her head in it. She was really sick. Well, it just goes to show that if you have the stick-to-itiveness, you will get what you want. I tried out for a one-act play last week in which all parts were cast except one, the daughter, an ingenue. 30 girls tried out for the part, and the director just called me and told me he was very impressed with my reading, and I have the part. I'm very happy about it, and I'm anxious for rehearsals to start. Daddy, don't work too hard and keep your mustache long for me. I love you both so very, very much. Your Lydia.
November 10th. Dearest folks, Mother, your weekend with Steve sounded very lovely. And as for Sandy Chernow, I was surprised. I thought that Steve had changed his type of girl and was looking for one that had a little more upstairs. I know that he would find a flock that he liked here. Love, Lydia.
November 18th, dearest, I just finished another theme, 500 words on my definition of highbrow, all A's on my last 4 themes. So folksy, see you soon. All my love and hugs, Lydia. P.S. This year, I certainly have a lot to be thankful for.
Monday, 2:30 p.m. My dearest folks, arrived safely after a long but enjoyable trip. The minute I stepped in the dorm, the girls who had arrived earlier ran up and a series of hugs and kisses were exchanged, and it seemed as if we hadn't seen the girls for months.
Daddy, the girls on the train thought you were the most distinguished-looking man they'd ever seen, the spitting image of Prime Minister Clement Attlee. There's a real compliment for you.
All the girls seemed to have had a wonderful time over Thanksgiving. Robbie Slutsky came in my room last night, and as I unpacked, told me of her parents buying their 9th car, a new Cadillac Eldorado. She's so funny as she says, "What do they need another one for?" She's actually almost ashamed of her wealthiness, and to be so unsnobbish and simple is a wonderful and unusual trait.
No need to state how much I enjoyed being home. It was just the right kind of break we all needed. Both of you look wonderful and happy, and as you say, you are happy when we are happy. I am doing my share of keeping you happy by being the happiest and most thankful girl in the world. Thank you for the wonderful but short few days.
XXXXXXX. All my love, Liz.
And extra special for me as a mother of a recent Syracuse grad. Not too much has changed. I've been given the great honor of making Piper's comment already come true, who was mentioning seeing Lydia's traits in her children as I share with you Todd's witty words. This is the story of a woman we so greatly admired, and the telling of her stories will never grow tired. She so loved her home, it was a place to come and go, and her door was always open. There was a constant flow. We knew her as Lydia, Mom, Mimi. That much is true, and for many here today, she was their good friend too. A singer and actor, she loved to perform, whether on stage or in the kitchen, it was always our norm. When dinner was over and the friends we'd go out to meet, she'd put down the dishes and join us on the street. Could be box ball, kickball, or a catch in the yard, she'd always join in and never try too hard. It was just her way, and our friends never did mind. She was just one of the gang, with never a thought to leave her behind. She was the life of the party, loved to dance and wiggle, and the one time she tried pot, said it did nothing for her, but just made her giggle. She took us on ski trips every February, to be sure. We loved it, she hated it, but she always endured. Black diamonds for us, always looking for something new, while she played it safe on trails called Whoopsie-Doo. By now, you have heard all the tales of Mom from the past. The memories we've stored will now forever last. We will miss her and mourn her and her everlasting love, but we know she's smiling down on us from her new home high above. As we are about to conclude our time together, I share with you that donations would be warmly guided toward the Michael J. Fox Parkinson's Research Foundation, and the condolences will be received today at Lydia's home at 37 Doral Greens Drive West in Rybrook, and that will happen from 4 to 8, and tomorrow at Kimberly's in Valley Cottage from 11 to 2 and 5 to 8. I ask you now to rise for our final prayer, the El Malei Rachamim. El Malei Rachamim Shochein Bamromim Hamtzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Ashchina Im Kedoshim Utorim Kizor Harakia Mazirim Et Nishmat Lydia Auslander Shelcha Leolama Balarachamim Yasirav B'Seiter Kenafav Leolamim Vitror HaChayim Et Nishmata Adonai Hu Nachalata V'tanuach B'Shalom Al Mishkava V'nomar Amen. Fully compassionate God on high, to our loved one who has entered eternity, grant her clear and certain rest with you in the lofty heights of the sacred and pure, whose brightness shines like the very glow of heaven. Source of mercy, forever enfold her in the embrace of your wings. Secure her soul in eternity. Adonai, you are hers, she is yours. May she rest in peace, and we say, Amen. Thank you, everyone.
you know, heard about the old girlfriend, the girl that didn't have much.
John Harvard.
You girls did amazing.